All right, Nick, let's talk about the Chicago Bears. Obviously, the Bears landing Ben Johnson, fantastic move for them. I personally, a little surprised they were able to do it, especially so quickly. I think it was due to some tactics they pulled off at the very end there that really put them over the edge. So that's fantastic news for the Bears. But now Ben Johnson, he's in-house. He's got to start to build his staff and build his team. I think he has a lot of big decisions to make. And about one of the big decisions he's going to have to make in the future, we have a really great update talking about what he may do there. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, some big decisions on the horizon for Ben Johnson and his staff. One of the bigger ones that's coming up relatively soon is the NFL draft and who the Bears may be targeting. There's rumors out there, but nothing is better than looking at what the odds in Vegas have for the Bears. We have an article highlighting just that. Let's get into it, and we'll talk more about it on the other side. This, of course, over from SI.com. It says, like winter in Chicago, NFL mock draft season started early this year, and to this point, a reasonable majority of the interwebs have many draft pundits have the Bears nabbing LSU offensive tackle Will Campbell, who frankly would be a steal at Chicago's 10 spot, with Texas offensive tackle Kevin Banks Jr. nipping at his heels. Las Vegas isn't buying it. Michigan's Will Johnson slides in at FanDuel's number 10 spot and will be a great get at that point in the draft. Cornerback isn't a first-round level priority for the Bears. With so many other needs, it's doubtful GM Ryan Poles would consider a day one defensive back, but sometimes the bookmakers know what they speak of, which is why on April 24th, the NFL draft for that matter, the Chicago Bears war room will be must-see TV. I think that is very interesting here that the Bears, their highest favored player they get is a defensive back. Vegas always knows a little bit of something when they put these odds out there. So very interesting update for the Bears, potentially grabbing another defensive back. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that one, Nick. But before we get to you, Chicago fans, in the comment section below, as the article alluded to, Vegas may not know everything. Maybe you know better. What do you think this team needs to highlight in the draft? Or is there anyone in particular you're already looking at? We know it's a little early, but what else we got to talk about? We got to focus on the next thing in front of us, and that is the draft. Let us know what your thoughts are on who the Bears should potentially pick up in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this interesting news regarding the Bears draft pick?
Yeah, Vegas may not know everything, but they are the smart money and they are the big money. When it comes to setting these odds and picking favorites, whether it's in games or draft selections, they invest millions and sometimes billions of dollars, and if you look at everything they do, to be right or to be as close to right as physically possible. And they throw all kind of factors into it. And I know Bears fans right now are like, why on God's green earth would we even consider drafting a DB? You're misunderstanding what the article is saying. What the article is saying, what Vegas is betting on, is that two things will happen. One, the Bears will be in a position to draft the best player available. And number two, they're only going to be in that position because they are going to address their biggest needs with big moves prior to the draft. That's what you should focus on here. Vegas isn't just saying that they think the Bears will draft Will Johnson. They're also saying the Bears are going to go heavy, most likely offensive line, in free agency or via trades. And I think trades is where the Bears potentially are going here because we know Ryan Poles is a wheeler dealer. Sometimes good, the DJ Moore deal, sometimes bad, the Claypool deal. We know he's going to go out there and make big time moves, big time splashes. That's who he is. That's what he's been since he arrived in Chicago. And I think that's what he's going to want to do to give Ben Johnson all the tools he needs to execute his offense. Johnson has come out publicly on numerous occasions saying, listen, O-line, top priority for us, which makes sense because obviously one of the big reasons why the Lions were so good and therefore Ben Johnson looked so good was the fact that the Lions had one of, if not the best offensive line in football. And I'm pretty sure the Bears aren't going to wait to the NFL draft to try and address O-line. They just aren't. I think we're going to see a lot of big deals come out. Maybe, I think at least one, certainly I think probably two trades and free agent signings here. Maybe the Bears are going to trade up into the top 5 to get an offensive lineman. Who knows, right? What Vegas is essentially saying here is that if Vegas sits at number 10 and whoever they select there, it's not going to be O-line because they would have already addressed it before then. I think it's going to happen via Ryan Poles-led trade, and that's what Bears fans should focus on here. I know a lot of people are like, "Why? Johnson's great. We don't need a DB." They, in this case, what Vegas is saying, the smart money, the big money, what they are saying is that the Bears, come April 24th, will have addressed their needs already through big deals, big trades, like I think is what's going to happen. And then they're going to be in a position to take the best player available. That's a good sign for the Bears. Vegas, they're not always right, but they're closer to being right than any other entity out there. And I think this is a good sign, because if the Bears use free agency and trades to address this offensive line and then go into the draft with a strong position, they're going to be in a great spot as we get ready for mini camps and training camp and the 2025 regular season.
Yeah, Nick, and I think what you said there is supremely key. It's exactly what I was thinking in one aspect of the article is misleading, because it's not necessarily saying the Bears are going to draft the DB. It's saying the DB the DB is slated to go to the number 10 spot. Will the Bears be there? That is a question I think that could be debated. Maybe, like you said, maybe they trade back, maybe they trade up, try to get one of those offensive linemen that are in the draft that probably would go a little bit too early for them. But also, like you said, I think the key here is the Bears are going to make some big moves this offseason. We know that Ryan Poles is really great at doing that, and he does make impact moves as well. Like you alluded to, DJ Moore, obviously Montez Sweat as well. A lot of great moves that he has brought in for this team to build out the defensive line, to build out the receiver room. I think he's going to build out the offensive line before the draft. And I think, like you said, the smart teams, how they draft, they get into the draft in the first round and they pick the best player available. So I think if you're a Bears fan, if the Bears get to the draft and they are selecting a DB, especially Will Johnson, at the number 10 spot, you're in a really good spot, because they are now situated to start to get really supreme talent, and that is going to help you a lot going forward. I remember a few years back, the Baltimore Ravens, they've had a great defensive backfield for a long time, but what do? They get the number 14 overall pick, pick they didn't really get to pick that high very often. Best player available comes, they pick a safety, which they already had a lot of DBs, but Kyle Hamilton emerges, and now he's one of the best safeties in the NFL. So when a team is in a spot where in the draft they're able to draft best player available, good things usually come out of it. So I think if the Bears are in that spot, we're going to see something really, really surprising come out of the draft.